What's up, people? It's Dave, Duncan Kyle, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Atlanta trio, Dead Register.
Atlanta? No way.
Yeah, let's get into that in a sec. The band's
Let's
album...
not be so surprised. I make the mistake of guessing where bands come from every review, and it's always fucking wrong.
We expect that from you, though, but band's new album...
I didn't realise we were just doing shots fired at the start of this episode. I'll remember that, Buchanan.
Band's new album Alive will be released on... Let me just get this. Band's new album Alive will be released on May 13th via Seeing Red Records.
I'm seeing red right now, motherfucker.
This is album number 2 from Dead Register, who have been active for around 8 years. The album was recorded by Randy Garcia, Avril Che, and M. Chvasta, and then mixed and mastered by Dan Dixon at RCD.
I love it when you say a word that you're not sure, so you just say it the other way and then say it the original way, then the other way, then it.
I'm covering all the bases. Covering all the bases. I think it's Che. Is it Che?
Che?
C-H-E?
Che. No.
Che. Gonna go Che. She's in the band. She's in the band, so it's cool. So this band.
Apologise on Dave's behalf.
Yeah. Everyone does.
This band are a trio.
Yep. Trio.
Fronted by a husband and wife, which is M. Chvasta and April.
I genuinely thought you were going to say M. Night Shyamalan. I was like, oh my good God.
M. Night Shyamalan. Joined by Randy Garcia on drums. But there's more. And this is where it gets crazy, boys. Not a single guitar on this album. Not one. Everything you hear on this album is coming from either a Fender Bass 6 or a 4-string bass and synthesizers and drums, obviously.
Oh, right.
Not a guitar, though. No guitars. 0 guitars. I know bass is a guitar, but no.
A bass is a bass.
Right, Kyle. Fuck's sake. Like Dave's shots fired everywhere now. He's about to call the listeners cunts. Watch this.
Yeah, I read this bit in the press release when I was listening to the album, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
That's not.
It doesn't make there's a particular comparison that I'm going to be making in my review, which now maybe makes a bit more sense mentally for me. Okay. But that band still had guitars, but they had a lot of keys. So the final thing was that the artwork for the album was created by the late great Stephen Kastner, who also worked with Sun, Isis, Justin Broderick, to name a few. And I just want to point out the artwork for this is awesome. I would have this tattooed on my flesh tomorrow. Yeah, there's something very Clive Barker about it.
It's
very Clive Barker.
It's really cool. I love the kind of hand-drawn stuff. It's really cool. Yeah. So actually, I know Duncan did mention that he thought I might have picked this album for him, but I kind of had Kyle in my mind when I was listening to this, like for some reason, when I was listening, and it wasn't the fact that it's just all bass. That's not the reason I was thinking that.
Literally the common denominator now. You're just like that. Oh, the bass sounds okay. Let's give it to Kyle.
But I don't know what it was. I think I was thinking of. Remember the band we did? I could be last year. There was a band called Throat. I think it was Throat.
Yes.
That band came to mind for some reason. I was like, I think Kyle might dig this album. But I didn't even think about you, Duncan, to be honest.
I honestly don't know why. I don't want to give too much away, but this is my album of the week. So I'm fucking listening to this to death, Dave. Fucking death.
Ho, ho, ho. Okay, well,
this is where Kyle says he fucking hates it, Dave. Fucking hates it in your face, Dave.
Well, let's get into it. Kyle, did you hate it?
Fuck you, Dave.
I don't have any energy to fire back at you, Kyle.
Dave has been shitting for the last 3 days non-stop.
the fact that one, he can sit down right now with confidence, or two, even move in his chair without the fear is a testament to his dedication towards reviewing.
Clear fluids only at the moment, guys. This is vodka.
Yeah, what people don't know is he actually, like, before we started this, snorted about 3 packets of gelatin to make sure it comes up.
I've been on the Imodium for days.
Anyway, Dead Register, album Alive, Kyle, all the bass.
I mean, I noticed the bass when I was listening to it. I was like, that's a fucking bass, that is. Oh my God. And I could kind of, well, not tell, but I did think maybe it was a bass 6 because it's got that sort of short scale tone to it, which, you know, a bassist who's been playing for 20-something years may notice.
Yeah. So
I was like, right, but I didn't look it up or anything. I just loved it. I was absolutely, this album is also my album of the week.
Oh, interesting.
Really, really good call, gonna say. This is definitely a me album as well. It's got a lot of everything. It's got a bit of doom. It's got a bit of metal. It's got a bit of The Cure. A little bit of that gothy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a great mix. I had no idea it was a trio.
Yeah.
Not at all. Like, they got these sounds out of 3 people without arguing all that much because they're a husband and wife.
Yeah.
But now you say, I didn't read that bit. Like, there's no guitar. It's all synth and bass. I'm just like, fuck off.
Yeah, I know.
But it makes sense if they mix a bass 6 and a 4-string bass, because the shorter scale will make it sound a bit like a guitar if you play it higher up. So they can get away with that. But I'm gonna have to re-listen to this with that in mind.
How do they do it live?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Well, what they do is they fire the bass player, because who the fuck needs bass? Come on.
Unless the bass player is Goro from Mortal Kombat and has 4 arms, which is entirely possible.
That'd be great, yeah.
So yeah, M. Shyamalan does the vocals and bass, and
So
Avril does bass synthesis, and textures, and a bit of vocals as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like
That's
it.
good.
Big
Yeah, I
Randy
wonder
does
how
the
they
drums.
do it live. Either they have like an either they have an extra member they have live, or they do it to backing tapes or something. But either way, I'd love to see that live. That'd be fantastic. I haven't said shit about this album yet.
You have not said shit about this album yet.
He's dancing around it.
Yeah.
You know, like, the thing is, like, that is one of those details that when you, like, this is why I'm so glad I don't read the press stuff, and it's not because of pure laziness, although some people have claimed that. It's because I enjoy listening to something coming in with a distinct idea of where the band's from, like influences and all the rest, and then getting here and then either having them completely confirmed by Dave, which makes me feel like I am God, or hear things that just make me go, well, I was never going to get that. And a press statement wasn't going to help. So
No.
Yeah, I must admit, I didn't get the Atlanta reference either. I automatically thought British, to be honest. That was like UK band.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Especially in the vocal. I mean,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, that's such an English dude. I was like, come on. He's got hair out here and he's wearing bangles, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. Yeah.
probably not. Jesus. No, I mean, from the first listen, this album I was hooked. I was in. I was definitely a me album. Absolutely. I mean, I like the heavy shit too, but this was just all of the stuff I like rolled into one. It's got its heavy moments. That bass tone can get thick as fuck, especially on Longest Day, the second to last track. Halfway through that track, it just goes, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, give me more. Which now thinking about it, maybe lay it up or something, but I don't give a fuck. It sounds great. And the production on it is like, again, it's one of those near perfect productions. It sounds like the band. There's not too much studio fuckery. It's not timeline. It's the band in a room. It's that sort of sound. I really like it. The snare tone, actually, and I don't go to snare that much in albums, but this one really stuck out. It's such like a woody, solid sounding snare, and I really liked it. It just like grabbed me straight away, like, oh, cool. That's a nice snare.
Nice.
But no, I mean, the whole flow of the album, it's not so much up and down, but it does ebb and flow a little bit, but it's not like giant. We've listened to some albums recently where it's been like giant ups and downs and ups, but this one isn't so much like that. But I like that they keep the flow all the way through, and I think It helps the album because it doesn't like dip down too much, but it doesn't get too fast. It's very, and it's not monotonous either in the whole flow of it, which I thought was good to listen to. It was very easy to put on to repeat. This one, definitely. I must have listened to it quite like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. It was, I can't remember what I was going to say. Lost my train of thought. I think the beginning of the album, they try to set up what they're going to do, like, but they don't really flip it. But no, it's interesting to listen to, but they don't change the style they have all that much. Mm-hmm. But it's still very interesting to listen to, especially now you've told me there's no fucking guitar in it. Like, I'm going to go back to it and go, oh man, that's a bunch of bass and synth. Wow. What am I doing with my life?
Literally, I'm looking at you just now, and all I can see is bass guitars and a synth. Come on,
do
Kyle.
Don't have a bass 6 though. Might have to get one of those just to see what happens.
You don't have to get one. You don't have to get one. I love how this conversation is going to play out in the Seven Oaks household.
Yeah.
Hi, wife that I love dearly. I need a bass 6.
And she's like, what's
Why
that?
do you need that? Because you've got an 9-string guitar, Kyle. Surely we had this conversation a year and a bit ago. We don't need it. Well, there's this band and it sounded like there was a guitar. In fact, I would have put money. I would have put my 9-string guitar on the line that there was a guitar there. And it turns out there wasn't. Nope. And now that I know that I can do this, I must do this.
I must do it.
Why?
She's like, you've already got a 6-string bass. I'm like, this is a different type.
Why are you packing? Why are you burning my clothes right now?
Wait, my suitcase doesn't belong on the lawn. Oh man. Now, there's a lot to love about this album. A lot to like. There's not much I picked out in my listens that I didn't like, to be honest. Other than the fact I can't really pick out a favorite song except for the second to last one, I guess, because of that thick bass tone that just pops in. It just sort of flowed. I mean, we've said this before, but it sort of did just sort of flow over me when I listened to it. And it wasn't that it was in the background, but I just sort of almost lost myself in it. And it was just like, it's hard to judge the best parts of an album when the whole thing is that good. And I think it's up to really high standard. I think the songwriting is great. I think the dude's vocal tone is fantastic. I love it when singers can actually let themselves sing and do that soaring thing. And I know there's a lot of reverb and stuff, and that helps it out quite a lot. But you can still hear the voice behind it. It's really, really nice to listen to. It's very, very pleasant, very easy to put on, and very easy to just have on all day, as I did.
Nice. Duncan, what are you thinking?
So let's do the vocal thing. Let's get that out of the way. Vocally, the dude sounds like a cross between Kavost from Beast Milk and Grave Pleasures, Ian McCulloch from Echo and the Bunnymen, like huge Echo and the Bunnymen vibes, which is a band that I actually, about the halfway mark of the album, was like, this sounds like a heavier Echo and the Bunnymen. And weirdly, in certain registers and in certain cadences, Chad from American Head Charge. Like, just certain tones, like, just hit me in a way where I was like, I like, specifically the way his melodies work are very similar to how his clean vocals sound. Go back and listen to it, you shall agree. I was like, this is one of these ones where the first track is deceptive, and that once again after the first track, I was fairly sure I knew what I was getting. And the album doesn't really move too far in any way, shape or form from it, but interestingly enough, I almost 180'd on what I actually would classify as the style. The first track, Alive, the title track of the album, came across to me on first listen anyway as kind of like a cross between like mid-90s era Stone Temple Pilots with a bit of kind of angsty 2000s-esque, not new metal, but you know that kind of genre that people lumped into new metal that wasn't really new metal. Kind of reminded me of that, but with kind of those 80s kind of new wave vocals. And I was like, right, I don't really know what's going on here, but it's interesting enough. And like I say, the album doesn't really move too far from that, but what I found myself being brought back into is just the confidence in the songwriting. There is a huge degree of this is just how the songs are, and you just stick with them. Vocally, it has not, well, it doesn't have the most unique tone because I compared them at 3 vocalists, but it has such a confident range and register. And once again, it's not a huge range either. It stays fairly contained, and you could even argue to an extent, and some people may, I don't know, I'm looking at you, Dave, that that vocally he maybe doesn't stretch himself to the limits of what he clearly can do, because you get little flurries of it. But weirdly, I kind of liked the contained register of it. I thought it worked really, really well. The reason behind that is, like, you go back and listen to bands like Echo and the Bunnymen or The Cure. Vocals are alright, but it's not really, they're not the greatest vocalists in the world. It's all the stuff that the rest of the band's doing that makes it sound bitchin'. So specifically here, the work on the kind of atmosphere and the synths is fucking great. It's so buried in a lot of ways in the mix, that, you know, it surprises me that it is that way from what you've described. The kind of the knee-jerk reaction when losing an integral member of what people see as being a rock act or a rock setup is to predominantly lift other instruments up. If you listen to a band like White Stripes are a really good example of this, where there's only 2 people and they just mix it, or Royal, what's her name again? Royal Fuck. The Royal band.
Royal Fuck, yeah.
Royal Fuck coming 2023 from this guy. What's the name of that band? It's not Royal Thunder. Is it Royal Thunder?
Don't know.
There's a band, a rock band that's a 2-piece that I think might just be a bass and a drum. And
Lightning Bolt.
No, it's not that. That's like,
but that is one of those.
Royal something. Whilst I'm talking, I will find the band whilst also reviewing, because I will like to shirt the common stereotype. Royal Blood's
Royal Blood's
Royal Blood's a 2-piece, but when you listen to it, it doesn't sound like a 2-piece, but it's because the instrument, I think he's a bass player and a drummer. I may be totally wrong about this. It's mixed in such a way that when you listen to it, you're like, that sounds fucking huge. Clearly there's 3 or 4 people in the band. No, there's only 2. That's kind of what surprises me about this. Like, if you're removing that element, now I know what you're saying, there's 2 bass players and one of them's doing the keys, you would just assume that the keys would be louder in the mix. So I'm actually I'm surprised, but in a good way about that, because I think if the keys were too loud in the mix, it would actually ruin a lot of what the vocals are doing. It allows room for the vocals to breathe. I mentioned Stone Temple Pilots. I mentioned that kind of angsty sort of early 2000s sound, but there's also a little swath, and Kyle mentioned, of the goth in here. A little bit of Typo Negative, which I found really, really, really cool. Typo Negative, another band that, like, if you were to try and place them on the map, the last place you would place them is Brooklyn, which is where they were from. Like, when you heard Pete Steele talk when he wasn't doing the vampire accent, you know, he didn't sound anything like you thought he would sound. And I get that from this band, you know, like I think they may be leaning into accents as a way to not paint them, but to accentuate the sound they're doing. I think that works surprisingly well. The typo stuff, like, comes in little flurries, specifically on the last track, Old Flame, which I fucking adore. And I was painstaking. You've no idea the trauma I went through trying to find what this reminded me of. And this is a deep fucking cut. Deep cut, ladies and gents. Typo Negative for the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer did a cover of Summer Breeze.
Right.
And that's what Old Flame sounds like. The riff is, they slow it down. It's almost unrecognizable. They slow it down to the it's so
but
slow.
Now
it
you've
sounds
said
like
it,
it's almost
exactly what you're talking about.
It almost sounds like it's in reverse. That's how slow it is. Old Flame has that. It has that vibe about it, which, once again, makes me think of an obscure Typo Negative song, which makes me love this fucking band. It's just going to happen. I think what overall works for this, without meandering too much, which I have done already, is I don't think anything about this is exceptional. I don't think necessarily. I think the biggest element of wonder about this one is the fact they pull it off without a guitar. Which, that like, once again, is a detail I didn't know coming into this, but still was my favourite listen all the way through. But I think there's a purity of what these guys are doing. We mentioned bands that try and sound of an era and sound of a time, and there's a very easy way to do that, and that is to just rip it off. You know what I mean? Just like change a couple of notes on a riff that's famous, and lean into like an Instagram wash production design that makes it sound of an era and all these things. This band doesn't do that.
No.
And I love that about that. There's a great degree of honesty here, which I find myself kind of loving. Tracks like In Between and Jade Love, I think, are just great examples of the band kind of flexing a weird kind of all 80s attitude, but with kind of almost like a 90s alt rock sensibility, but with a really cool production. And the album just like it never does anything hugely surprising, and never really goes in any way to a place that you wouldn't expect it to. Like within the first like verse and chorus of this any song on this album, you kind of know what you have, and it never really deviates from that, which usually would be a negative for me. I'd be like, it's far too predictable. But the predictability of the album, if anything, added a level of comfort for me, to the point that by the time it finished, I was right back on it again. There's just something very... It certainly plays with styles and sounds that I grew up listening to. So it's one of the big reasons I was such a Beast Milk fan way back in the day when they released that, is it reminded me so many albums that used to spin in my house as I was a kid. That this kind of does the same. It just there's an earthiness and an honestness about it that just really, really works for me, and endears you to almost not listen to it on repeat. Like this one I listened to death, like easily more than double any other listen that I did for reviews on the 4 reviews that we're doing in this session tonight. So I kind of love these guys, if I'm honest. They really just like tick a lot of boxes of things that I find almost comforting in music. It's not the most dexterous stuff. It's not genre redefining.
Sometimes it doesn't need to be great music.
But there's something about just honest music that transcends that. Yeah. Where someone's like, where a band's playing within, they know what the register is, and they do that. And my only complaint, if I have one, is vocally. I think there's more in the tank, and I think if they both allowed themselves to delve a little bit higher or lower, which they can do because they play with it, I think it might open the sound up a bit more. But yeah, this thoroughly surprised me from the artwork, which I did love. I had a whole idea of what I thought this was going to sound like, and even after the first song, I had a whole idea of what I was going to think of the album, and by the end, I loved it. So yeah, this one, they're firmly on my radar now. I genuinely, this is one of these ones where I get giddy and all excited. I would never have heard of this band if I hadn't been for this record. So yeah, I talked a lot, but I really liked it, Dave. Should come to me first.
Okay. I've also, this is probably the album I've listened to most this week as well.
Wait a second.
Because
no, you haven't. You are a liar, David Buchanan.
The last album we just reviewed, the word of the review was conflicted. I'm going to bring that back on review 2 here, because I am conflicted with this album.
This is amazing. I picked the word of the night. This is like an episode of Sesame Street. What do you not like, Dave?
I'd heard of Dead Register before. I just never actually heard them. Also assumed they were from the UK, so I was kind of interested to hear this. And what I would say is that the first 2 tracks of the album are super strong. Like, personally, in my opinion, the best 2 tracks of the album are track 1 and track 2.
I'm not going to argue with you just now, Dave. I know you're unwell, but you're wrong.
And let me finish. Very melancholic, very doomy, with like a kind of undertone of sludge, a bit of post-punk coming through. For me, the mashup was definitely a Typo Negative, bit of Kill and Joke, and like a doomier White Void or something like that.
Nice.
Kind of going through there as well. Yeah. But I think what kind of ties that whole sound together are the synths and the vocals. I really enjoyed the vocals from M. Javasta. I think his tone is very haunting, but it's not like delicate or whispery. You know, it's got a bit of a kind of more gothic twist. Very British, as we mentioned, in that kind of like new wave meets post-punk type way. But I think because this particular style of doom or sludge is kind of drenched in that atmosphere, it almost allows the vocals to be a more prominent feature. There's plenty of room for them to kind of weave in and out of melody, and those first 2 tracks are very hook laden. They'll easily get stuck in your head, and Circle of Lies has a bit of that kind of vocal hook too, but it was probably more the strings and the synths that caught my ear on that track. It adds a kind of cool dynamic and atmosphere, and I loved how relaxed the kind of groove was on that kind of the first 2-3 tracks. It's got a kind of pulsating feel, but they don't force it. It's very fluid, very natural. But after those 2 tracks, possibly the 3rd track, it becomes apparent that they are not going to create an album full of hooky bangers. You know what I mean? This is not that type of album. They often veer down a more kind of experimental avenue. They maybe increase that tempo just a shade. Jaded Love had a little bit of that hook, but it uses the kind of the bass and the rhythm to drive it forward, a bit more kind of gusto, a bit more heaviness. And then you've got tracks like 2 Silhouettes, which piles on the atmosphere and the layered synths with a bit of that kind of post-punk type backbeat to it. It's all very lush sounding, and it really kind of draws you in on the closing track, Old Flame, which is a kind of darker, kind of gloomier affair, but again, really homes in those kind of haunting melodies and eerie atmospherics from the bass and the synths. My issues though, the one track that I didn't really like was Longest Day. I think...
Oh, you've just spat in Kyle's mouth.
I just didn't get into that track at all. I think the rhythm of the verses is really off-putting for me. The drums
I like that. I really like that.
Oh, the drums are very kind of like a shuffling kind of off-kilter type vibe, and I thought it was cool to start with when it first came in on the track, but it was a rhythm that kind of kept coming back around, and I felt like it kind of lost its quirk because I heard it too much, and it took me right out of the track. I couldn't hear anything else apart from that rhythm.
Dave's like that scene in Some Kind of Anger where Some Kind of Monster where Lars Ulrich's playing that thing and like James Hetfield's like, just no, what are you doing? It's like, it's just stock, man. It's just stock.
Yeah.
Like he's playing like clearly a beat he shouldn't be playing.
Yeah.
He's like, what are you doing? Just play the thing I want you to play. Don't play that all the way through the song. Amazing.
I think I've listened to this album a lot, and I think as a whole, it definitely does grow on you more. Like the more time I spend with it.
Is that because you wanted to like it? Because that was my issue with the aforementioned review that we've done, wherever it lands. I was listening and there was like so many elements that I was like, this is fucking great.
Yeah.
But I had to keep listening to it because whatever I was kind of stumbling over, I was like, well, maybe another listen will kind of clear that up for me.
I think my frustration came from the fact that the opening 2 tracks just felt really strong, and the album, those tracks are the highlights for me, and it feels like it kind of dips after that for me. The other tracks that follow are a little bit more experimental. They don't have the hooks that quite match those first 2 tracks for me, so it took quite a few listens to kind of adjust to that. I think maybe splitting those first 2 tracks up might have helped distribute the kind of hooky songs throughout the album, but they always have the reasons for ordering the album in the way they have. But after 4 or 5 listens, as I said, the album does grow on me. I just didn't find that there was as many hooks in those other tracks. It's a weird one. Like the production's really cool as well. Like it's got a big kind of roomy production, which I think is paired perfectly with the band's sound. I think it definitely aids the delivery of the tracks. But I just felt like there was something still missing from some of the tracks for me that, like, even now I've listened to it 4 or 5 times, and the only tracks that stand out are like the first 2, possibly the third one as well. The other ones I can't really remember much about, apart from that rhythm that I fucking didn't like. So yeah, I'm conflicted, very conflicted on this one. I wanted to love it, but there's something that's just not connecting with it.
Give in to the love. You can do it.
It's maybe the sickness, boys. It's maybe the sickness. I don't know.
David was down with the sickness. Ooh,
So ratings. What did you score this one from Dead Register? Kyle, what you thinking for your rating on this one?
You know, going into it was already pretty high because I like this kind of music already. But now you've mentioned all the instrumentation, and it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. I think I'm going to come in on this one at a pretty sweet 4.5.
Okay. Duncan?
Yeah, there's no way I can't give it a 4.5. It's my favourite thing that came in this week. Like I say, there's without repeating phrases that we use. We should just get like t-shirts made up with phrases that we use all the time. Like, this album takes you on a journey. And the other one, which I'm going to use right now, I'm a mark for this sort of music. I really am.
Say this
like,
album fucks.
I really get this album. Like, I really am. It evokes so much of an era that I love, and it does it in a really honest, sincere sort of way. You don't like Typo Negative, so it doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me that some of this is like. I fucking loved. The older I get, the more I love that band, and any band that even, and they don't sound like Typo Negative. They just have influences of, and they use them in the most honest way. Honest is where I come down on this album, so 4.5 is where I'm landing.
Okay. So hard to score this one.
It's not. We did it
because, like, I feel like the whole like concept of them not having guitars feels like I want to score it higher, but I need to kind of keep in my head that like I'm scoring this on the songs. What did I actually think of the album? And for me, it lands about a 3.5. I think they've got a cool vibe. And I said I like the fact that there's no guitars on this because it clearly sounds like they have. It just took me a real long time to start to appreciate the other tracks on the album, and even still, there are moments I just do not connect with this. But I'd recommend it because I feel like there's a lot of people that would probably love this album. And it does grow on you. It has grown on me more since I first listened to it. I just can't help that feeling that I get after track 3. It just kind of goes like that afterwards.
Dave, in Japanese business culture, when someone dishonours the business, the CEOs at the table will turn their backs to them, which I'm going to do right now.
All right, I thought I was going to have to cut a finger off.
That's the Yakuza. We're not
Yakuza.
gangsters.
All
right. I keep my gun locked up, yeah.
Okay, so that's 4.5s and a 3.5 for Dead Registers Alive, out on May 13th on Seeing Red Records. Links below, check them out. Facebook, Bandcamp. Let us know what you think. What's your thoughts? What's your opinions on it? Happy to hear your thoughts on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
It's all